that said, also, I would like to acknowledge our sponsors for this event, Graphic Communications, Dr. Tim Cran, and Dwen Media also being part of it. And of course, we want to say a big thank you to MOBA Secretariat, everybody involved in the planning committee. And now let me invite MOBA 83, Charles Kobler, National Organizer, to help us with the opening prayer. Please put your hands together for him as he joins me here.
We'll sit and pray. Shall we bow our heads? Father, we thank you for today, that the opportunity has come for us as MOBA to contribute to the conversations of development of our great country. We thank you for the distinguished speakers that have made themselves available for this job. For all those who are listening all over the world, may what we are going to do here be of excellence to you, O God, that as the training in Mfantsipim in the philosophy of sacrifice and excellence, grant us the joy and the mercies to go through this day, that we will also say we have done something to the glory of God. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. I also have the pleasure to now hand over to the moderator, the distinguished gentleman you can see from his outfit today, Mr. Roland Kosa. Thank you.
Do you hear me? Okay, good evening, and welcome to MOBA Engagement Series number 6, year 2021. As my computer is trying to boot, I'd like to welcome all of you. There are our colleagues, our peers, well-wishers who are also watching online. So the way we have to do this is let us be very efficient in the way we are managing time, because we are starting nearly half an hour late. My computer is still not working, so I'll just ad-lib what I have to say. It is very important for us to take this series very seriously, because it is an opportunity for us to engage in this continuous education, be part of the public conversation. In a democracy, if everybody keeps quiet, darker lights are what you see. When they say darker light, it may seem incongruous, but that is what you see. You see few people occupying the public space and muffling the rest of society. So anything that is very topical, irrespective of our background, it is important to demonstrate some curiosity, which is part of human nature. In fact, because of the current turmoil regarding non-heterosexuality, and a law that is even going to be passed and that sort of thing, we've created controversy, perhaps, which to me is more of a distraction, given the fact that we are confronted with many more pressing issues. Our young people don't have jobs. Our roads are poorly made and poorly maintained. Accra is prone to flooding. We have all manner of challenges facing us as a developing country. The energy that we have to be applied to solving these problems. But in a free society, everybody has a right to bring ideas, whether they are members of parliament or executive branch or even ordinary people on the street. So let us take these engagement series very, very seriously. I wanted to talk about nature and how it is very important to know that everything that we have known is derived from the human brain, whether it is religion or philosophy. whether it's the genius of mathematical language or the written language, whether it is chemistry or biology, physics, astronomy or cosmology. It's all because human beings, we are an evolved species. I'm a Christian, but my Christian belief systems are very, very, very immaterial to nature, which is what it is. Nature is what it is. We have probed and make substantial progress because when we keep open minds, we are able to make progress. Today, education is the birthplace of modern society. All human travails, all human triumphs derive from this educational adventure, which across history, humans have made, passing it on from generation to generation, enable society to congeal, to cohere, and to make the progress that we see. Here in Ghana, some 31 million people in the 21st century, we are compelled to take part in the discussion and deploy our talent of logic and intuition to continue the work that our forefathers did for us, our forebears did for us, so that we too can pass on this legacy to the next generation. Education, education, education. I do not want to go on, but I like to say that we are very, very lucky to have a very topical theme. That is that we must rethink education in the context of a new normal. And we have 4 speakers, each of whom is going to present for 10 minutes, because we cannot exhaust such a very broad range. Because of that, we have divided this into infrastructure, the way forward, change management, and finance. The speakers themselves will give the interpretation and the definitions. Let us keep an open mind. We're going to give ourselves to make this Socratic, more interactive, and that we have comments, we have questions, we can raise them. So without much ado, I'm not going to introduce the speakers by reading their resumes. That's why each and every one of us here has been served a copy of the brochure. Please read, and after that, you can engage them in the conversation. My first speaker, and that is our first speaker, is our Senior Samson. Please, give me a round of applause. He is talking about change management. Challenge here. So Samson will wait, and then Senior Watson, MOBA 71, will present his way forward. Because of the way it is not arranged in any order. Any one of them can give his speech. Thank you, Senior.
No problem. Let's just work with this.
Charger. Okay.
Oh, so I'm okay. Yeah, okay, I'm plugged in. Yeah. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I don't see any ladies, but let's assume they're ladies. Good evening, classmates and MOBA. Okay. Let me first thank my classmates, MOBA 71, for selecting me to participate in this, the 6th edition of the MOBA Engagement Series, which forms part of the activities of the 145th speech and prize giving day of this great school that we are all so proud to be products of. I'm honored that my classmates conscripted me for this worthy cause. And I must clearly articulate a caveat, and that is that the views that I express here today are my personal beliefs. My classmates, or indeed Mfantsipim School, cannot be held responsible for them. My views and the proposals I suggest are provocative and definitely novel, but I implore everyone to think deep and long about them. The focus of this year's series is Rethinking Education, and my topic is the way forward. Right off the bat, let me say that I personally believe that our educational system, as now structured, is not meeting the developmental needs of the country as much as it could. I actually had a video that I wanted to show. Yeah, okay. So the next slide. Oh no, that's not mine. Okay, there's a short video. I think I can show it later. It probably doesn't matter, but it's a video of a lady. She's an engineering professor. I think KNUST. Most of you will remember her as the lady who runs that school competition, I think science competition between different schools, different high schools. And she's basically talking about an episode where brilliant Ghanaian students who won the competition in Ghana went for a competition, international competition in Portugal, and they could not take part of the competition. Why? Because as smart as they were not able to understand the equipment that was given to them to use. And she was lamenting to KSM that the education that we are giving to our students here in Ghana apparently is all theoretical. There doesn't seem to be any relationship to real life solutions. And I think that is true across the board. There are a lot of people who have got PhDs, they get first class in their various disciplines, but do not perform as well as we expect them to do. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk about the great education. Sorry, I'm not going to talk about the great education that you and I had at Mfantsipim, or Wesley Girls High School, or Presec, or even at Chirinsua Secondary School, which is reflected in our individual and personal, professional, and social successes in Ghana and elsewhere. And I'm also not going to talk about how good our education was compared to subsequent generations as an illustration of the rising or falling standards in education. I definitely will not be talking about how well or how badly Ghanaian students are doing compared to Nigeria on the WASI. And again, I'm not going to talk about stories of how well Ghanaian educated professionals such as doctors and NASA scientists are doing in the United States and the UK as a proxy for how good our educational system is in Ghana. I believe that these are the wrong parameters to use in evaluating the quality of education in any country. This is because the evaluation of an educational system is not only about what kind of information and skills that an individual student acquires, but it is more importantly about how those skills are used to improve the development of their societies. Indeed, it is our emphasis on the former rather than the latter that is why our education system seems to be failing us as a nation. So how and why is our educational system failing us? And what can we do about it? What is the way forward? I'm going to talk about general education. I would have wished that I had the opportunity to talk about medical education in Ghana. Unfortunately, because of time constraints, I will not do that. But if there are any questions about medical education, I'll be very happy to answer them during the question and answer time. So to have a clearer understanding of why our education system is not meeting the needs of our country, let us partly go back to the history of educational development in Ghana. Before colonization, education was informal. Knowledge and skills were transferred orally and by apprenticeship. And then the colonizer came. Very early in the colonial period, formal schools, books were introduced first by the Christian missionaries and then later by the colonial government. At the beginning, school was for the children of the elite, and this included the mulatto children of the colonizers, sons of the local chiefs, and wealthy traders. As the colonial enterprise expanded, an educated workforce was needed. More and more natives had to be educated to meet the needs of the colonial economy and to civilize the uncivilized. The natives were taught enough to become storekeepers, clerks, and other supporting staff of the colonial government and the merchant houses. It is important to emphasize that the skill and knowledge training that we're giving at this time were geared to the needs of the colonial economy and policy. On the other hand, we the natives, we saw the colonial school as the place where you went to learn English and math, passed the British examination, and you got a job as a clerk or a government job. There was a job waiting for you after graduation during those days. Working for the government or the merchant houses made you special. You had access to a regular salary and the perks of employment depending on your employment status. You also became more worldly and respectable member of the society. The higher your education level, the greater the advantages. So more and more children went to school and more parents worked hard to send their children to school. This is where the colonial education, with its emphasis on training students and pupils for existing jobs after graduation, got us into the box in which we currently find ourselves. Since after independence, we have tweaked the education system through various committees and policy changes to increase enrollment, lengthen the years of instruction, ensure equity, and even added practical and vocational training. But we have more or less stayed mostly inside the box, which says education equals job. This historical background has led us to what I see as the new normal in education. One, currently the government spends about 23% of our budget on education. Families spend a significant portion of their income and savings on educating their children. We as a country collectively spend about 3.99% of our GDP on education. Our school enrollment continues to rise significantly, which is a good thing. The reason for going to school for the family and the student has, however, not changed. Everyone expects to get a good job after graduation. Every year, about 250,000 to 300,000 students graduate from our high schools, vocational schools, technical schools, and the universities. These numbers will continue to increase as our population increases. However, youth employment is high and continues to rise. There are not enough jobs for our graduates. I understand that it takes about 3 to 5 years for a typical graduate of our universities to get a job. The youth post-graduation joblessness is going to get worse. Some have described this phenomenon as a national security threat. The bottom line is this: the socioeconomic significance of this phenomenon is not positive, and it cannot be ignored. The central government cannot, and indeed should not, be expected to create jobs for all graduates. China tried it, it didn't work in Mao Zedong's time. And now there's a significant amount of private enterprise going on in China, as we all know. Then on top of this, there's this paradox of our educational system where, as I quote Dr. Kaufman, engineers do not do engineering. We are producing archaeologists who do not dig up any historical relics to enhance our history. We are producing electrical engineers who work as bank tellers. In other words, something is not going right. I believe our education system must be used to solve the socio-economic problems of this country. So I have a few suggestions. Some of the character traits that I believe education should instill in our youth may be unexpected and novel, but I want you to think long and deep about them. Follow my argument, and I hope I get the opportunity to answer your questions. I want to suggest that we do the following. Unfortunately, I don't have the slides, but I'll tell you. We must instill the sense of patriotism and love of country in every child that passes through the education system. 2, entrepreneurship must be mandated throughout the junior high, senior high, vocational and technical parts of our education system. And this is the most controversial of my thoughts. French must become a mandated language, English language in this country. I'll explain why. I believe that the kindergarten system, which has been added to our education system now, it's an official part of the education process, must teach character, what I call character before knowledge. Now, for those of you who've been following education, there's something similar. Similar to what happens in Japan, where the first 2 to 3 years of educational effort is just used to train the children on non-academic stuff. Again, I will explain it as we go along. So let me explain myself. Patriotism. The first, and what I personally believe is the most important characteristic that our education system must instill in every student or pupil that passes through every classroom in Ghana is patriotism. Yes, you heard me right, patriotism. By patriotism, I'm not talking about the sudden burst of short-lived, exuberant hilarity and utter joy that we get when Ghana beats Nigeria at football, or when Azuma Nelson wins a boxing event in Las Vegas. I'm talking about the lifelong kind of nationalistic love of country, the kind of nationalism that makes a citizen not litter his country, the kind of nationalism that makes one not steal from the country, the kind of nationalism that makes a citizen want to come back to his country soon after graduating in a foreign land to help build the nation. Nationalism, I believe, is central to nation building, and it is crucial. We must, as a people, love and respect who we are. Above all, we must love our country and help it to prosper. Entrepreneurship. The second thing that I think should be mandated in Ghana schools is entrepreneurship. There should be a deliberate emphasis on teaching entrepreneurship. That is looking for and recognizing social opportunities that make money as a self-employed individual, knowing how to set up successful businesses, how to access credit, how to employ workers, keep workers, market your company products, etc. I believe that graduates of secondary, vocational, technical, and tertiary schools must be taught to see entrepreneurship as a preferred alternative to employment by somebody else. Now let me repeat that. I believe that entrepreneurship should be taught and presented as a preferable alternative to employment by somebody else. Students must be taught to see entrepreneurship as an alternative to employment. Oh, wow, okay. They must be taught to see entrepreneurship as an alternative to employment. They must be taught to become entrepreneurs by education, by the education system. Now, mandating French. This recommendation is to enhance the size of the market for entrepreneurship. The West African sub-region has a population of 350 million people, divided between the French-speaking and the English-speaking countries. This language barrier limits trade and tourism between the Francophone and Anglophone. by making French a mandated language in Ghana at the same level as English, it will open up the whole sub-region to the Ghanaian entrepreneur. And in this era of African free trade agreement, this will be a great advantage to the Ghanaian economy. And before anybody cries and says, oh, another language, remember that Holland has English and Dutch. South Africa has 21 official languages, or even 32 here sometimes. Singapore has English, but it keeps a native language. What I'm trying to say is that a lot of countries have more than one language as an official language. And we, using French as an official language for commerce and for interaction will be very, very advantageous to us. Now, okay, so what I'll do is I'll just quickly talk about this character before this and then I'll stop. Now, I described something as character before knowledge at the kindergarten level. And the way it works is this. The 2-year kindergarten period should be used, is the most formative years of a child's life, and it should be used to teach the child certain things which are not academic. Even in the Bible, it says, train up a child the way he should go and he will never depart from it. This is what we're talking about here. The emphasis at this level should be instilling character in the child. Apart from reading, writing, arithmetic, and all the other things will be deferred to the primary school. A child is taught in a very focused way about cleanliness of the environment, patriotism, love of country, and self.
Sure.
And in a nutshell, the child is taught the values, the Ghanaian values, and ethical living. The patriotism education should start from the kindergarten and go through primary and all the way through the basic and the secondary school. Girls should be made to understand that their hair, the cheveux crépus, those of you who did French.
Okay, Senior, let's do this way. You will have another 5 minutes to expand on this because we want each one of the panelists to have their 10 minutes so that it will set the ball rolling. You have more time for question and answers.
So at this level, what I'll do is this, we got to the point of this character training before knowledge. So I'll leave it like that, and then at the 5 minute level, I will expand on it, and so that we see where we are going with this.
Thank you very much, Senior. As we said, the topics are very, very deep. It can be expanded, but we'd like our panelists to give their 10 minutes of chat, and then if you have your comments, your questions, as brief as possible so that it is more interactive and everybody benefits from the conversation. My next speaker will be, our next speaker is Samson, Senior Samson. You have 10 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bain, senior old boys, ladies and gentlemen, friends from the press. I also like to thank my year group, MOBA 81, Centenary Greyhounds, for nominating me to do this presentation. I need to mention that when I was first invited for this talk, I spoke to 3 seasoned educationists, leaders, and politicians in this country. And I asked them 3 questions hovering on change management. I said, what's the challenge that you think this country faces? All of them said, financing. 2, interference. 3, exclusion of the change implementers. Then I said, okay, so what about the major reforms you've seen in this country since the colonial era? One said, Kwame Nkrumah's accelerated developmental program. I said, wow. That one was obviously in the 70s or 80s. The second one said, F-cube. I said, wow. So you must be in your 40s and 50s. Then the last one said, free SHS. And I said, okay. So we've been taking through a lot of models and systems in this country. But today I'll focus on a few things. I will talk about the definitions of change. I'll premise my presentation mostly on two quotations from very illustrious old boys. Reverend T. Bauer, who says that I would like to raise a generation of men from a Mfantsipim school who will be bold enough to face the problems of their own continent practically and unselfishly. Strangely, another educationist says that we expect teachers to reach unattainable goals with inadequate resources. The miracle is this: they often do. So I went back to ask myself, are education providers legendary miracle workers? As a change expert, I like to examine the facts and figures before me before I recommend any change solution. So let me worry you with a little bit of the statistics that I've come across. And hopefully that will build a compelling case for our rethinking our education. In Africa, 9 million of primary school age kids will be unable to attend schools. For every 2 children, 1 will drop out before graduation. 8 out of 10 countries with the lowest primary enrollment rates are in the sub-Saharan Africa. 33 million primary school children in Africa do not go to school. 7 out of 10 children who live in rural areas will never set foot in a school. Secondary schools can only accommodate 36% of the students of school-going age. And if that's not enough, 15 countries in Africa have already abolished school fee paying for their school students. This is an effort to try and get schools populated with students. Source, bojanproject.org. Let's come home to Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, your own Mfantsipim has a class size of 55 students averagely. 29.4% of children in upper secondary education are out of school. This is Ghana. In 2019-2020, enrollment in secondary schools went to 404,856 students in SHS. I'm just building a burning platform for the case for change. Total number of teachers in secondary schools is 187,914. Yours truly, Mfantsipim, has 147 teachers. Of course, my senior colleague just mentioned that GDP spending is about 3.9%. Gross school enrollment in Ghana is 69.57%. I have a lot of questions to ask as a change expert. Because if these stark statistics face us, then we should be taking the issue of change management in education sectors very, very serious. Let me visit one of the definitions of change management. It is the process of adequately preparing an organization for the upcoming change, creating an implementation plan for leading change in schools, and then implementing the change. A second definition has it that It is a structured approach to transitioning individuals, teams, and organizations from a current state to a desired future state. I'm sure the statistics I'm sharing with you are getting you worried. But let me worry you a little bit. From 1951 thereabouts to date, the school-going age is 6-3-3-4. It sounds like a football formation team. Strangely, successive governments have changed the number of years our kids spend in secondary school. In 1974, it was 4 years. New government in 1987, 3 years. New government in 2000, 4 years. 2009, new government, 3 years. How can anybody cope with this change in this country? But I have 3 questions which I think will generate some more discourse. Who should determine the number of years students should spend in secondary school? Should there be other actors of change in the process and reforms? And who are these change agents in our country? My guess, central government, Ministry of Education, Ghana Education Service, parents, teachers, and students, we all have. The question is, have all these stakeholders been engaged in the discourse for change in our country? My fear is that as a change in government the next couple of years, we may revert to 3 years or maybe 5 years. Is it not time that we began to have a serious discourse and dialogue that locks in these serious issues constitutionally? I would dare say that you need a 90% approval rate from Parliament before you can change anything like the age in school or what type of structure we must have in schools. Otherwise, anybody will come and change it to 5 years or 6 years. And despite all the efforts of change, these will all be whittled away. I look back at what Senior said a couple of minutes ago. 4 models I've seen: Mfantsipim School, Achimota, then we had Jerry Rawlins's GSS and SSS, and then also now the free SHS. Believe me, this is a nightmare for any change manager, because by the time the systems are in place, we have introduced another one. I have 4 issues here. The number of years in secondary cycle institutions should be agreed and locked in. The structure of education should be agreed and locked in. The quality of education and funding should be locked in. And you must also have a blueprint for engaging key stakeholders in the agents of change. Without these 4 key common agreed areas, we're running around like headless chickens. But what is critical? Secondary school education is critical to achieving our vision of economic transformation as laid out in the AU's agenda for 2063. Access, while it is increasing, is very low compared to other regions. And inequalities in access in the youth areas, rural areas, are a difficult problem for all of us. But beyond access, measures of learning and relevance are also key in our case. Let me give you some more compelling statistics. 1/5 of children between ages of 6 and 11 are out of school.
I have 1 minute, and then you can expand.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to build a compelling case for change. Then I'll now hit you with the change models we believe that we must look at. So from this prompt, I'll ask you and tell you that as you're sitting here, some of you are angry at the statistics I've provided. Some of you are anxious. Some of you are guilty because you have been part of it. Some of you may be depressed. Others may be hostile. Whereas others may be in a state of denial and anger. Have we catered for all these major stakeholders in our change systems? I don't know. The question is to you. But I think that there's hope at the end of the tunnel, because a Canadian educationist called Folland believes that if change in the education sector does not involve the human element, then we are scratching the surface of issues. He believes that we must understand the quality of education and work on teacher advocacy and external change. I have 4 questions for him and for Reverend Bartels, as well as for Reverend Balmer. Should we not be improving the relevance of curriculum to build knowledge and skills? Should we not be providing flexible pathways at scale and financing education with equity, as well as ensuring a highly skilled teaching workforce? There is a change model called the change acceleration process. It has been endorsed by the Six Sigma Institute and the Research Gates. It has 7 steps. And on the screen you can see them. It starts with leading the change, creating a shared need, developing the vision, mobilizing commitment, planning and executing the change, communicating, aligning, and sustaining the momentum. I think the governments successively have done a great job. Where the problem I see coming from is they have gone straight to planning and executing the change. And most of the time, at the same time, announcing and communicating the change. Only to find out that they did not align the infrastructure, they did not create the shared need, they did not develop the vision, and neither did they mobilize the commitment. So we go back to the drawing board and we start all over again. Perhaps, if you look at this model and we apply them in our wide education efforts, maybe we'll be getting somewhere with our change efforts. I'm not here to tell you that they did well or they didn't do well. All I'm saying is that...
Okay, I would like you to hold your fire, and then you can expand when you have your 5 minutes.
Okay, so let me land with one last quotation from Reverend Lockhart.
You are granted.
And ask him, because he'll be turning his grave, if he knows the series of changes that we've had in this country. He says that in a few years, the people of this country will be amazed at the number of its influential citizens who owe allegiance to this great school, Mfantsipim. I don't know if this is the case. Maybe pre-2020, yes. But I shudder to think about what will happen 2020 going forward. There is a compelling need for change management, not only change management, but a compelling need for accelerated change management in our education sector. Thank you.
Thank you. You have 10 minutes. I've been giving everybody 2 more minutes, so I will allow you. Okay? Yeah.
I have 10 minutes now.
I represent MOBA 91. Hello. Sorry. I represent MOBA 91. And the figures that I will present represents an individual or something that impacts an individual. In the past 2 years, speaking on infrastructure, SARS-CoV-2, also known as COVID-19, highlighted the disparities between the resource-rich and the needy. Almost all sectors of the various economies of the world were impacted greatly by this pandemic, and various organizations had to make adjustments in how to conduct their businesses. Restaurants and shops had to do more deliveries than they had previously done. Organizations which hitherto depended heavily on seeing people face to face realized that it was possible to have a lot of staff work from home using internet sources and other means to communicate and to hold meetings. Education at various levels suffered the same fate. Those in the cities fared better than those who were living in rural settings as a result of the disparities in infrastructure and internet access. The question is, how do we proceed from here? In 2018, Singapore spent 0.087 of its GDP on education. Within the same period, Japan spent 4%, Malaysia 4.5%, Ghana approximately 4%, and Nigeria 7%. The important issue here is not the amount of GDP spent, but which particular aspect of education the amount gets spent on, because that influences the disparities that we see between developing and developed nations. For 2018-19 academic year, for both private and public sectors, Ghana had 17,585 junior high schools, 973 senior high schools, and 153 tertiary institutions. In the same year, there were approximately 497,000 senior high school placements, with 441,000 approximately enrollment. The question we must ask is what happens to the about 56,000 who did not get enrolled? Also, less than half of these enrolled students later proceed to tertiary institutions, and what happens to them? Meanwhile, as of 2019, a total of roughly 35,000 primary-age school children were not enrolled in any of the schools in Ghana. About 57% of Ghana's population is under 25 years, according to the last census we had. And this figure may trend upwards. The question is, what is the plan for the academic and subsequent career advancement? The school environment in various places is generally not conducive. Classes are overcrowded, water and sanitation facilities are inadequate, teachers and school books are in short supply, and this poor quality of education is reflected in students' results. As of 2019, it was estimated that 86.7% of the people living in developed countries had internet access, compared to 44% of those in developing countries. Ghana's penetration is estimated as of 2021 at 50%. This means that over 15 million of the 31 million Ghanaians are without internet access. Without going into further numbers, I will engage in a short discussion on the matter. The working and the educational sectors have become extremely technology and internet dependent. Weak and unreliable internet has always been a major problem in developing countries. Before Ghana became 16 regions, I traveled all through all the 10 regions. The situation you find in rural settings is very disconcerting when you bear in mind that the students and the pupils who go through school there will have to compete with those in the cities. And what happens is that later on in life, they are ill-equipped to compete on the global stage. Addressing the challenge of infrastructure requires a policy direction to which all partners in the education sector contribute and collectively implement. There are three choices. Either we improve the infrastructure in terms of numbers and quality and ability to meet the needs of all people and students, or develop an internet-based educational system, or try a blend of both. On the implementation side, the following will provide a foundation for takeoff. First, there must be reliable internet across regions and schools in particular. This makes information readily available to all within the education space and serves as a leveler for those living in rural and urban settings. Internet strength with at least 3G must be expanded across the country, whilst existing 4G and 4G LTE continues being developed and broadened. The private sector, which has led in the telecom sector, can suggest modalities for this, whilst the government provides the requisite tax incentives to make this viable. Second, data packages must become affordable, especially in deprived communities, since there's a huge infrastructure deficit there. If you look currently within our setting, there are more tertiary institutions down south than up north. The ease of access depends not simply on available internet, but affordable data to access information. The quality and extent of research possible is either boosted or undermined by this. Third, there's a need to train educators from the very onset to stay abreast with current trends of online education across the various platforms. Once educators can easily handle the preparation and sharing of materials across the various platforms, learners will more easily move along. This form of education provides more than is offered by the traditional teaching methods of chalk, blackboards, markers, whiteboards, printouts or handouts, and reference materials. It requires the educator to be able to share information online in a user-friendly manner. It makes it possible for students and pupils to interact with their teachers, clarifying issues of difficulty, receiving assignments, and submitting the same virtually. Fourth, Government was working on a central repository for libraries to be accessed online. I think a decentralized system at the district level will better serve this purpose. On this, people-student information systems could be set up beyond the scope of normal libraries. Knowledge management systems, which enable schools and educators manage the type of content students receive, will address potential abuse of the online system. Fifth, laboratories where content can be viewed or accessed is a consideration, in as much the same way as we have physical structures for libraries. These can pay for themselves based on how they are run. For example, Stanford, Harvard have various courses that anybody, anywhere in the world can take. But to receive certification, you have to pay a fee. For a start, we can look at English, mathematics, and science before rolling out to the various subjects that students have to learn. And some existing classrooms can be employed for this. Finally, computers for the libraries, laboratories, educators, and for individual learners are the last element to be mentioned in this infrastructure discussion. It is a plate on which this education buffet gets served. Simple and expensive ones become non-negotiable whilst we prepare for more sophisticated ones. There are issues of content creation and ownership within a framework of cloud sourcing for information to be settled. To set the ball rolling, I urge non-governmental organizations operating within the education space to pilot this in the districts they operate in to motivate the government to nationalize this. These organizations relate with school management committees, parent-teacher associations, and school administrations, and would move faster than government, which tend to be ponderous. They also have a better view, of course, relative to the infrastructure components and handle the issues of content creation and ownership far more easily. Meanwhile, technology solutions that do not require being online 24/7 is a way to go whilst we look at the broad framework of what we need to do. Thank you.
Our last speaker is he is speaking on finance. Okay, 10 minutes. Then we will go through the questions and answers. Thank you.
Good evening, distinguished old boys, guests, viewers, and listeners. I'm grateful to the Mfantsipim Old Boy Association for this opportunity and to my year group for the honor of selecting me to speak at this year's MOBA Annual Engagement Series. I have the unenviable task of offering my thoughts on the finance stream of today's theme. Over the next few minutes, kindly join me on a thought-provoking journey of exploring unconventional solutions for the challenges of the new normal. But before I do that, where do we currently stand on the subject of education spending? According to the World Bank, Ghana has made substantial progress in providing to its people. While globally, government spending on education averages 4.5% of GDP and is 5.2% within the OECD and is 3.7% in sub-Saharan Africa, Ghana's spending has averaged 5.2% of GDP over the last 8 years, with the latest spending being 4.2% in 2019. However, economic and social development disparities still exist, especially regarding access to education at some levels. While there are many policy implementation issues, a significant portion of this disparity relates to financing. The COVID-19 pandemic lockdown exposed how unprepared the world was in general, particularly in terms of infrastructure for learning delivery. In Ghana, the pandemic highlighted gaps in socioeconomic development. To an extent, these gaps may have been even widened by the mandated school closures and are an evidence of different parts of the country lacking economic and social development. Substantially, education spending in Ghana has been public sector led and thus funded from the public purse. This funding regime was not an issue in the past, due to a relatively smaller population and less sophisticated learning requirements. With a larger population, which I must say has grown by over 480% since 1960, and an increasingly open society and economy, the country's education needs are constantly changing to maintain relevance in a highly competitive global market. The critical questions in need of answering are: what type of education do we need as a people across various levels? How and where should education be delivered? And finally, how should education delivery be funded? Given the shocks of COVID-19 and the new normal, answering these questions may require some unconventional thinking and concepts that we may not be used to as a people. Please permit me to offer some perspectives on the last question relating to funding. For our journey today, I will separate public education from private education, as historically private education has funded itself quite well to a reasonable extent. Wages and salaries take up a significant portion of Ghana's public education spending, leaving critical areas such as infrastructure and learning delivery severely underfunded. For instance, the Ministry of Education's budget of 12.6 billion in 2021 allocates 82%, that's 10.4 billion, to wages and salaries, 17.4%, that's 2.1 billion, to goods and services, and only 0.2%, that's 25 million, to capex for infrastructure. Looking ahead, particularly with the new normal, it's clear that we require new and innovative ways of delivering learning across all levels of education. The post-pandemic period requires additional funding for areas such as virtual learning and assessments, calling for a different approach to funding public education. In the same vein, without reducing workers' compensation, we must find other ways to fund learning delivery. If successfully funded and deployed, a reconfigured education delivery model will go a long way in solving Ghana's education infrastructure challenge. But really, how has public education in Ghana been funded in the past? By the government, of course, and let us not forget our friendly benefactor, donor agencies, and development partners. But the future is now. So we ask, in what other ways can we fund education without exerting further pressure on the government's purse? Let's consider the following. What if we run schools and classify them into three categories? The first being schools with the ability to attract fee-paying students. The second being schools with the ability to support a hybrid system where government caters for certain expenditures. And the third class being schools without the ability to do any of the above. This way, government funding could be optimized and targeted at schools needing it the most. What if we funded aspects of public education using public-private partnerships, that's PPPs? This already happens at a higher education level, so why not at the secondary school level? Especially in terms of accommodation, capacity building, learning delivery infrastructure. Now, by learning delivery, I mean, as a senior just said, infrastructure around data, internet, access to all of those things. That's learning delivery, capacity building. PPPs would be the easiest way to involve the private sector in a hybrid system to fund and deliver public education. And what the private sector brings to the table is innovation in school design and technology, development capital and expertise, supply chain management skills, economies of scale. Now, who are the private sector? Well, we have what we call the education operators, and in the advanced economies, we have the likes of Apollo Group, Kaplan, Pearson Education. They all provide services. We have service providers, the ICT companies, MTN, Vodafone, maintenance companies, and supplies delivery companies. We have design and build contractors, financiers, banks, private equity, impact investors, pension funds, endowment funds. So for PPP to work, the appropriate coordination of all of these parties is required. Any apologies. What if we funded public education using a parallel curriculum that offered IGCSE in addition to the WASI curriculum? This approach could be aimed at schools with the ability to attract willing fee-paying students locally and from within the sub-region. Now, certain international schools in Ghana charge between $14,000 and $17,000 a year, and even then they struggle to accept all their applicants. At one school, for example, there were 90 spaces and there were 350 to 400 applications. 90 students paying $14,000 is 1.26 million. That's the entire operating budget of Mfantsipim in one go, being covered by only 90 students. So is it feasible for a school like Mfantsipim to run the IGCSE curriculum to generate the needed funds to supplement the funding requirements of the WASI stream? Overall, the ultimate impact of this is growing IGS for public education. Now, what if we initiated a public policy framework for means testing to assist the free SHS implementation? An effective means testing policy and approach should allow a more efficient allocation of funding to public education. Admittedly, to means test, we need more data on parents and guardians, and I believe the government's push for Ghana card and its various integrations across SNIT and GRA are essential prerequisites for means testing to work. What if we return the schools to the mission schools? What if we return the mission schools to the missions or gave them a certain level of autonomy? We would free up resources for other areas of public education and provide alumni associations with a desired level of involvement in funding and governance activities. However, to do this, a path to autonomy needs to be provided in Ghana's education laws. Current laws allow private schools to become public schools, receiving financial and governance support from the government, but they have no clear way of exiting such support. So what are the key takeaways? Public sector funding for education has improved over the years, but at a slower pace than required. Ghana's education spending relative to its GDP is above the OECD average. However, wages and other operating expenses take up the bulk of the educational budget, leaving critical infrastructure and learning delivery items either unfunded or underfunded at best. The post-pandemic new normal has exposed serious inadequacies and disparities within and across the delivery of our social services, including education. Our resources are limited, and our benevolent donors are periodically cutting their support to less endowed countries. We need to explore more innovative and less conventional funding options to optimize our education delivery. I believe that the various what-if questions asked today are not exhaustive, nor are they mutually exclusive. However, I hope they provoke the required thinking at the appropriate levels of leadership in education to improve funding and infrastructure for more effective learning delivery. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you all. As you see, in one fell swoop, we have some overview of various aspects of our education system that under the new normal society could be considering. This is just, whether it is description or prescription, it is an effort to contribute to a very topical national conversation. At this juncture, I would like members of the audience, if you have any question to ask, please, we'd like you to be brief, address it if it is to all the panelists, which is one particular person you can point out, and then we'll try to spend the next 45 minutes hour to do that. Once in a while, I will throw in a question if I see that people are not talking. Okay, so let us begin. If I do not know how, hi, yes, the lady in red is, okay, so our first question. You may mention your name if you care to add your year group or whatever, it doesn't really matter, but just go straight to the point.
Thank you. My name is Precious Eshenbedu, 2011 year group. It's been a wonderful session tonight, and I would like to say thank you to MOBA National for organizing this. To Senior Kofi Kodia, you made a very good point that I asked the Busian Painting during last year's engagement series. To the question of, can't we get the school back to the church so that as old boys, we can influence these decisions that we want the school to move in direction of? Thank you very much.
Senior Kodia, your take. Okay.
Oh, thank you very much for that particular question. Like I said, the education laws in Ghana do not provide a way for institutions to move out of public support. Now, let me tell you a story. In the 70s, that's when Mfantsipim really became a public education institution by all intents of the word public.
Please, you hear him, those at the back? You do? Okay, go ahead. So raise your voice. Stand and raise your voice.
All right. So I'll stand then. So as I was saying, in the late 70s, Mfantsipim had some financial challenges and applied under the Education Act of 1965 at the time for government support, and that made them a public education institution. Now, the flaw with that particular law, and even with the current one, is that there's no way to walk back that particular decision. There's no clear way. So we're kind of stuck in that position until we can figure out a way to exit the public public education institution classification. So there is some work that's being done across various institutions, not just in Mfantsipim, but there's no clear way, and that is where the work really needs to start from. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we have a question from one of our listeners online, Daniela Pia. He says, this is to Doc, why stop at French? That's your question.
Well, very good. Can you hear me? Yeah. Very good question. Well, we stop at French because if we learn German or we add a German to our lot, who are we going to speak German with? Maybe Portuguese with the Cape Verde and Guinea-Bissau, but French because the sub-region, which is the West African sub-region, is basically English and French. So the idea of the dual language mandate is to ensure that Ghanaians get access to the whole market of the sub-region. So two is okay. We don't want to add any more subjects.
Thank you, Sinia. Okay, now if you'd like to ask a question, please walk to the mic here and then raise your hand. Move it straight to the point, please, if you don't mind. We want as many people as possible to participate.
Thank you very much. My name is James Datson, MOBA 81. My question is to, I believe, all of them. I never heard the role of the teacher in any of the presentations. At least in my time, our teachers made such huge impact on us. And in all the presentations, I don't know how our teachers, for example, will have to refocus and rethink under the new normal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sinia. Okay, so let's start with Nahum. What do you think the role of the teacher under the new normal should be?
In my presentation, I mentioned educators being abreast with current trends, and that's one of the things. In using internet sources and applications, working virtually with students and pupils, that is where the educator also comes in, because materials must be prepared in a user-friendly way, such that it can be shared with students, for students also give feedback to lecturers or teachers, and where the assignments, it is transmitted via the same medium. That is where the teachers must focus in terms of how they prepare themselves to meet or interact with their students.
Sina Samson, any ideas?
Yes, and I'm a bit cautious because I wear a couple of hats as a politician, public servant, as a consultant, and as a psychologist. I did mention the role of the teachers, but what I said was that teachers are the major implementers of change in the educational sector. Strangely, they are mostly marginalized when implementations take place. But if you ask me to venture a thought, I see that we must seriously and significantly look at how we recruit our teachers, how we train them, and how we remunerate them. These are the three key issues that will motivate them, get them committed, and to buy into whatever change we bring in educational reforms. Thank you.
Sinakeke, any insight?
In my opinion, I believe the role of a teacher is very important, but as a teacher in the new normal, you are constrained by the infrastructure that you have available, and then also the level of capacity or skills you have at any point in time. And if you listen to the presentation I provided, one of the key issues was learning delivery, and that's where the teacher comes in. I'll cite you an example. During the lockdowns, there are two schools, one a nursery school and one of the other international schools with various levels. They deployed virtual learning within 2 weeks. Okay, that's infrastructure being available and having a plan. Secondly, the tutors had the capacity to use the tools that were at their disposal within that 2-week period. So if you don't have the capacity and you don't have the infrastructure, you're going to be constrained. So I believe that the role of the teacher there has to be, we have to build their capacity to make sure they can fit within the new normal. And then we resource them with the infrastructure that allows them to deliver their services to the students. Thanks.
Sina Joseph.
The role of a teacher in the education system has been proving, especially those of us who know about the Finland education system. In Finland has been noted and praised for being one of the best education systems in the world, especially in math and science. And the reason is that in Finland, the teacher has the same kind of salary and respect as doctors and lawyers. A teacher, to teach in Finland, you have to have a master's degree. That's a minimum degree before you can teach. And Finland, they start classes, first year is actually when you are 7 years old. Spend very little in the classroom. The teacher is in charge of the curriculum for the classroom, to the point where now it's been proving that the teacher's involvement in education is so crucial that we should be spending more time on the teachers than even the infrastructure. This has been shown because when Finland was compared to South Korea too has the reputation of having a very good education system. The Korean students spent a lot more time in school. In fact, they spent so much time in learning that the government had to make a law to prevent students from learning beyond 10 o'clock. The competition was that tight. And the reason why the two systems were examined together was to show that the teacher's role was so crucial that Finland could have a very relaxed attitude to learning and yet be internationally recognized. Whereas in South Korea, they worked hard and then they got their recognition through the effort of students. So coming back to the question, I think what we need to do is to understand the critical role of the teacher in an education system. Without a good teacher, you've got a problem. All of us remember the Mr. Grimbles, the corrosives and things like that. They had impact on us in such a way that it's still lifelong. So I think the teacher is extremely crucial to an adequate or maybe an excellent education system.
Thank you, Phineas. Yes, could I take the next question?
My name is Ebenezer Abbey. The name is MOBA 1997. Please, my greetings to the Busiampin and organizers of this program for having organized this splendid program. And my question is that, can we not say it is the case that the government as an entity must painstakingly lobby for sufficient funds for about, let's say, $1 trillion to not only to create jobs, but also so that they can get the liberty of doing a lot of things that they want to do, a lot of things that they have on the budget to do, so that they can apportion a lot to the educational sector in terms of infrastructure, financing, and what have you.
Thank you. Sinakeke, you are the finance man. What are the new ideas you propose?
Well, thank you very much for that particular question. We have to understand that the government has a lot of priorities that it has to cater for, of which education is one of those priorities. There has to be a balance between what they can spend on and what they can raise. Let's be honest, government has to raise money either via taxation or through borrowings, okay? But you cannot borrow indefinitely, Okay, that's not sustainable. So we have to have a cap on how much we borrow, number one, or what we are funding, or how much funding we're raising, and then we prioritize what we want to use the money for, of which I think education should be one of the primary ones that receives attention. But in a nutshell, the funding is available, but it has to be generated in a more sustainable fashion.
Thank you, Mr. Keke. Now, let me ask a follow-on question to Senior Joseph. If you were to meet the Minister of Education today, and you would like to impress upon the Honorable Minister the lessons from Finland and South Korea, what will you tell Honorable Minister?
That first of all, we have to take our teachers extremely seriously. Again, we all have the experiences and things like that, but without a good teacher, especially teacher motivation, you have poor students. And I go back to what I was trying to present. Look, the problem we have with education, especially in developing countries, is that we get bogged down by the process, forgetting the result. Because at the end of the day, why do we educate children? So that they will be useful to themselves and, of course, to the society. Because what is happening in this country is we are having large numbers of students coming out and not getting jobs to do. And that creates a huge problem because it's not going to get better, it will get worse. So some of us believe that the whole education system has to be looked at and tweaked in such a way that it meets the needs of the country and it provides at least employment. You know, when the gentleman was talking, he talked about the $1 trillion, he talked about for the government to provide jobs. Look, no country in the world provides jobs for its graduates, 100%, no. Nobody can do that. Even the rapidly communist countries cannot do that. So we have to look at education in terms of the results. The process is important. The system that we have in place, the infrastructure, the finance and all that, but we have to always look at what are we producing for our country and is it useful? So if I met the Minister for Education, I'll tell him or her, please, the teachers are important. Why? Because at the end of the day, the product that comes out depends on the activity of the teacher. You can provide all the infrastructure, and if the teachers are bad, students are bad.
Thank you, Doctor. Okay, please mention your name and your question.
My name is Jessica Fiamponsa, MOBA 2001. I have two questions, one to Doc and then one to Senior Dontor. Doc, you talked about character formation, you know, within the first 2 years, instead of, you know, using it to teach at the kindergarten level. Question is this: what are the values of this country? Because I look at the 1992 Constitution, I see probity, accountability, I see freedom and justice. Thus, as a country, do we have values? And what are those values on which we are going to build the character of these children that you talk about? And
please, let's make it more productive. Let them answer that question, and you can do your follow-on question.
Okay.
So, Senator Sampson, is that you? Oh, Doctor. Okay.
Well, but I'll add on. Every society has values, and some of the values cut across every society. I mean, cleanliness, respect, non-corruption. All these things are not peculiar to any particular country. But what I see in this country, which I find, and I'll give you a story to this, but that I find interesting is, when you go to Japan, clean society, everything is clean. Things are done properly, the people are on time, and you come to Ghana and it's the other way around. You see people throwing trash everywhere. And again, I'll give you this interesting story. I have, my last daughter is 12 years old, and she's in the US. And she came to Ghana, I think 2008, to the sister's wedding, my second daughter's wedding. And I thought she was having fun because she was all over the place, you know, meeting friends and all that, making new friends. And then we went back to the US, and my brother-in-law, that's my wife's sister's husband, asked my daughter, Vivi, we call her Vivi, Veronica. So, Veronica, how was Ghana? He says, oh, Ghana, I didn't enjoy the visit. And I was surprised because I thought she did. And then, so my brother-in-law says, why? He says, there were no trash cans. I couldn't throw trash around because there were no trash cans. I mean, think about it. This is a young girl going to school, and her emphasis was on trash cans in Ghana. I mean, I can imagine a Ghanaian child being asked the same question and what she's going to say. The other story too is by the daughter who got married. When she was 12 years old, we came to Ghana on the trip, and we were going to Kumasi. So on the way, we saw this coconut seller. I wanted to eat coconut, she wanted to eat coconut. We stopped, and the coconut seller cut the coconut into two. We ate the coconut, and my daughter was holding the husks, and then was asking me, Dad, where do I place it? There's no trash can. And then the coconut seller asked me, Dad, what's the problem? What does she want? So I explained to the coconut seller what the girl's dilemma was. And he says, throw it anyway. My daughter said, no. He's holding on to the husks. And you know what the coconut seller said? Thank
you, Senior. Okay, I understand. Senior Boy, before you ask your second question, let us give opportunity to some of our friends, schoolmates who are online. Yeah, guys, could you activate the guy on Zoom who would like to introduce himself or herself, if the case may be, and ask their question? Are you ready to roll? Proceed to ask your question. Be as brief as possible. There's a large number of people who would like to ask questions. So, who is this? Is it who? Oh, this is Mfantsipim School. Sorry. Okay, so we have a student or a teacher. Good years. What is the young man saying? That we should incorporate ICT in the curriculum as a requirement. Okay. So, yes. I'll start first with Honorable Neum. What is your take on that?
It's currently one of the subjects that is taken, but the policy must come from the Ministry of Education and Ghana Education Service. There are certain, well, I look at it this way. What do we want our children to be when they complete school? What is our aspiration? ICT 1, because of the global competitiveness that we want them. We've talked about French already. But it comes back to what is the access level. In Mfantsipim, maybe those scenario settings may have a disadvantage, but it comes back to the infrastructure, the financing aspects of it. It is a good thing, but unfortunately, maybe we don't have everybody here, those who would go into implementation, and that's what we're looking at. It's a good suggestion, and I think that rethinking education has to do with what are the core subjects that we think our students should go through based on what products we want them to become after school.
Okay. I see another hand. Can we have that question? Is it MPP USA branch? First of all, we'd like to know that this is an apolitical gathering. So the conversation is for the society at large. Please, you may proceed to ask your questions. Encourage those who are in the policy-making institutions of our state, whether they are political representatives or public office holders or educationists, to take these as inputs from citizens who have a wide swath of experiences and making a contribution. Those who have the purse of society through the Ministry of Finance, they make decisions based upon such inputs as we are given. And I think that is where we see ourselves as going. Those of us sitting here are private individuals. The only one panelist is involved in some form of government-related educational enterprise. So, good point, but the fact is that we should have this feeling that we all can make contributions to what apparently looks very technical, but experientially, we have something to offer. And to the extent that we are able to do that, the engagement series would have been very, very successful, because we wouldn't have known about, say, Finland and South Korea, say, but for Dr. Joseph's intervention. The infrastructural needs of society, for people who have experiences, done it, an international development consultant telling from experience, it becomes an input. A lot of these things are known. Most of the time in our country is the political will. The will to do the right thing so that the greatest good comes to the greatest majority of our people is perhaps the greatest challenge facing our developing country. The ideas are plentiful, but we'll see. Okay, so let's go to the young man. I told him I would let him ask his second question. Everybody will have your question because we've been able to maintain the time. Please go ahead and ask your second question.
Thank you very much to Senior Donto. My question is this. You made mention of about 4 series of changes that we have gone through. And you, from what I picked, it looked like you were worried about it. Now, my question is this. How long should a policy last before we attempt to make changes? Because for me, from where I picked and from what I picked from you, it looked like you were worried that over 60 years, we seem to have had 4 different changes through our educational system. So how long should a policy last before we attempt to introduce a question? before we attempt to introduce
Thank you very much. I'm not a policymaker. I'm a change expert. And I can tell you that change ranges from organization to organization, from policy to policy. Where I'm coming from is the fact that most of these laudable reforms are implemented. But sometimes there's not enough political will to hang on to them. So the next person comes and says, I prefer this one, so I'm changing it. Look at FQ, which is a great program for education. The three guys I spoke to mentioned that as one of the greatest reforms in this country. What do we decide we're going to do? Use oil money to pay for free compulsory education? If you don't lock this in constitutionally, somebody comes, he changes the constitution, the money goes out. So it's not the number of years that the policy must take, but it's how we anchor these policies and ensure that we have national dialogue so that nobody comes in there to just change it because of expediency. But it's going to be so difficult, and I propose here that go as far back as 90% of the parliamentarians before you can change any policy. And we know that's not possible now, except where some other political party said that I'm not going to do any elections. So therefore you have a majority rule in government. So I think this is where I'm coming from. On the issue of the values you raised and the financing, it's not enough for the government just to throw money at the education sector. You can throw so much money to anybody, but it's how you go about implementing the changes you are asking for that matter. So the teachers who sit in the classrooms, who understand that my son uses 2 minutes to exercise, but he uses 20 minutes to edit the exercise he's done and send it to his teacher. It is not the physical exercise that he goes to that matters. It is the knowledge he gains and the skill he gains from the editing of the exercise that brings about the skills. So, like I said, if our teachers, who are the ones in the classroom implementing the change, are not involved in the fanciful ideas we get through about on the platforms, they're not committed, they don't share the need, you can't mobilize them, then you know what? At the end of the day, we'll go back and start all over again. The money will go down the drain. So I think there's a concerted effort in this case to ensure that the money goes to the right place. And we don't just get about changing policies. I hope that the next generation will not have to go through 4 years or 5 years of secondary education. How are we going to prevent that? That's where the issue sits for me. Thank you.
Senator Home, when I went to class 1 in 1963, I had a slate, a black slate, and a box of white chalk. What do you think a child 6 years of age in 2021 going to school, K1, should have? Wow. And Sinakeke, how do we finance the possibility?
Well, currently, a slate and chalk will not work. At a minimum, there should be a simple Android phone that the child can use. Because during the lockdown, that is what happened. We should learn lessons from what we have gone through in order to prepare adequately for the future. But then it comes back to the question I raised earlier. What kind of products do we want our children to be? The financing aspect of it, will it be by parents? And if the parents cannot afford the simple Android phone, then what happens to the child? That's the question. But having a simple Android phone doesn't detract from the need of written or the normal kind of material that a child will still have to use. Because for now, we look at running a parallel system, having the things go in tandem, rather than say that this is the new normal, so all the old ways abolished, we go in the new way. It goes with cost. So we must look at a blend of the two, such that the child doesn't lose out, because if it will take us 10 years to get what the funding required, what happens to all the children who are in school within a 10-year period?
Sinakeke, any new ideas? I understand we have a large number of young Mfantsipim boys listening in on this conversation. So please, as adults, gray-haired eminences, show active interest so that our children and nephews will know that we are actually thinking about the future of this country. Okay? Let us be very actively engaged. And young people, ask your questions as and when you find a need to do so. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. In the mid-2000s, there was a program called One Laptop Per Child program, and that aimed to put a laptop in every child's hands. I think Nicholas Negroponte or something like that, which was a very laudable idea. Now, as Senior Nehum has said, and he rightly put it, the new normal requires different tools. Now, the challenge with the new normal is that there are socioeconomic disparities. So first, we need to figure and solve that particular problem. How do we balance everybody out? Then the next thing around, that's getting the infrastructure to everyone. The next thing we do is let's link the infrastructure to our manufacturing aspirations as a country. Assembling laptops and tablets, I'm sure some entrepreneur in Ghana has some ideas around or wants to do that business. What are the incentives we give to them? And funding it doesn't necessarily mean putting money in their pocket, but it could be the tax incentives you give them, the grants that you provide to them for the production process. So I think in terms of financing such an activity, government really, or as a people, we ought to look at the incentives that we're using to drive the production or creation of this infrastructure that is needed in the new normal.
You see, yes, please come. I'm going to make a comment. You can come and ask your questions. Say in the queue. Ghana is less than 1,000 kilometers north-south, 1,000 kilometers east-west. It's a very, very small, compact country. Okay, so let us assume that we take education as our defense against poverty, superstition, ignorance, unnecessary intolerances, and that sort of thing. And the way for a modern society to cohere is always to make sure that the average citizen is very well educated. So just like we have a standing army to defend the territorial integrity of our land, education is our first wall of defense against all these other things that are thrown at us by nature, by competition with the rest of the world, and our relationship with one another. Now, let us assume that in the same sense that Osagyefo's generation, Arthur Lewis, professor at Princeton University, was able to advise them to say, look, you are a poor, emerging society. Why don't you tax your cocoa farmers so that you can set up beyond Mfantsipim and Achimota and Adisado College all the GET schools, one of which I attended. Okay, so that every region of your country, there could be a secondary school that children who otherwise would not go will go. And through that system of taxation, we have a lot of Ghanaians who are now educated. Now, broadband services, which is the state of technology now, are such that we can see it as a national security issue for education. How about Get Fund being the financier of a broadband system that covers entire society, so that irrespective of where you are in society, whether you are in Sandema or Shama, whether you are in Sekondi or in Jamasi, you have access to the broadband services. And if in case of a child of 2021, instead of the blackboard and chalk that I had, you are given a tablet based on the incentives that Senior KK is talking about, then of course you would have equalized education. The SDG 4, Sustainable Development Goal number 4 under the United Nations program, talks about education. So all of a sudden, what used to be very difficult, a child in Sandema has access, and the only thing that is left is the motivation and the study environment. Everything is gone virtually. So government can also look at this possibility and make sure that everybody has a personal assistant device, okay? It's an iPad, okay? And all of a sudden, there's no need to print books because everything has gone virtual. The universe of human knowledge exists in the internet. You can pick up material from the libraries across the world. I was trying to do some research about Copernicus, for example. I went to Wikipedia, even though it is not supposed to be an authorized system because it's not peer-reviewed. At least it gives you the first entree. By giving every child an iPad or iPad equivalent, by making sure that Get Fund provides for the broadband infrastructure free of charge to every child who is in education, by stopping the printing of books and letting books become a virtual exercise. We will release funds to be able to participate in the new normal. These are some of the ideas that we should throw to policymakers who have the purse and also have the power to translate some of these ideas into realistic outcomes for the vast majority of our people. On that note, please mention your name and ask your question.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Dwen Hwe Kan, 2001 year group. I'm asking on behalf of a friend. I think Kofi mentioned about replicating the fee paying system in the tertiary institutions in our SHS. He wants to find out if you don't think that's going to create some level of classism for their age, looking at how young they are, do you think they'll be able to handle that? Thank you.
Over to you.
If I understand your question correctly, that is, does the introduction of fee paying or at the secondary level create disparity? Classism,
high class, low class.
High class.
Low class.
Okay. So the proposal that I shared earlier on is not necessarily about creating an imbalance. It's more of ensuring that we're able to fund our education system. So the angle that I'm coming from with that particular proposal has to do with using those expensive curriculum, the excess, to pay for the WASI stream, which is constrained currently. So what we're saying here is that we want to generate additional internally generated funds for education institutions. So that's another way of doing it. Now, in terms of creating classism, I fail to see that. Your IGCSE, your WASI stream, and you're all in the same school. Where's the class? It's not a class. I mean, we all came from different walks of life, but we were imbued with shared values when we got into the school. We left a lot of things at the door, at the gates, and then we became as one within the school. So I don't think that the difference between IGSE or WASI will create a class.
I don't know if I understood this question well. I think currently they are not paying fees.
Sorry?
I don't know if I understood this question well. I'm asking on behalf of a colleague.
Okay.
Currently, they are not being asked to pay fees. Everything is being done for them free.
Okay, so
introducing that.
See, what they are trying to say, the panelists are trying to say that given all that we know and we have done up to this time, are there some new ideas that we can also mull over? So he is making a series of proposals that are worth looking at. He is not saying that you must do it. It's not a mandate or a command. But think about it. What you have been able to do at, say, the tertiary level, private-public partnerships, is it possible, feasible to do that? Indeed, if you go to the Lincoln Community School, you are paying about $18,000 to $20,000 a year. And people are paying because of the value they assign to education. So if government is overburdened, and I will submit to the conversation that we are having this afternoon that the idea of a free SHS is a brilliant one. It is in the same spirit that Nkrumah in the early 50s, when he became head of government business, we started with this FQ theory, free compulsory basic education. But technology is changing fast. The human range of knowledge is expanding rapidly. Just finishing elementary school is not enough. Even high school is not enough. So if government sees it as a strategic imperative to make sure that every teenager goes to secondary school, it's a good idea. But let's just mull over it. When we were in secondary school, those of us who are in our early 60s, mid-60s now, most of us, the entire Mfantsipim school was less than 600 students. Okay, government could easily finance. The population of Ghana was 6 million in 1960, 8.5 million in 1970, 10.3 million in 1980, 11.8 million in 1990. Then I left the country, so I think I read somewhere we were about 22 million, and then we are now 31 million. The same government, but our economy has not expanded correspondingly to accommodate a 500% increase in the population. So So are we obliged to do the same boarding school system for every high school student? This is a point for a discussion that we should be able to make and impress upon policymakers to rethink. I believe that it should be a hybrid system. And my bold contribution will be that let us make only STEM-centric schools, boarding schools, as our first line of attack. So that if you're not studying the sciences where you need laboratories to do experiential learning, there's absolutely no need, not even in America, the richest country on earth. And I live in the United States. Not every child who is in high school is in a boarding school, and yet they are Nobel Prize winners. So nobody can tell me that you have to be in a boarding school to be a scholar. So given the resources that we have, the population bulge that we have experienced, and the limited resources that we all know we have, why don't you think differently? Perhaps in some parts of the country where there's low population densities, you can do agglomeration of students and then put them in boarding places, just like, especially in the northern and upper regions of this country. But in the densely populated cities, Accra, Tema Metropolitan, Sekendita, Kwadi, Kumasi and its metropolis, Sunyani, Kofodi and those places, high school education should be a day school system. Immediately you do that, you unburden Ghana government that has been bearing all these burdens. What people fear is that we are going to have inequality. Inequality exists. My mother was illiterate. I went to Saito. I'm the only one of 99 who went to university. So inequality has existed for a very long time. Not that we are saying that to toot our horn or to support any change. People who are in the middle classes recognize this and they take their children to the best private schools they can find. And if you don't have any influence on an average person who is a kenke seller, your children, your daughter or your son will go to school that is inferior. And then we repeat the vicious cycles of poverty. So if we genuinely are interested in creating equality of opportunity for every child born of a woman in this country, let us rethink some of the ideas that used to be useful when we were a small population and few young people were in school. There's absolutely no good reason for a government to implement a boarding high school system for every teenager in this country. I'm prepared to debate any politician. Okay? It should be at best a hybrid system. The first line of attack is a day school system. Okay, I'll ask 5 more questions and then we'll sum up and do it for the rest of the day. Okay, senior mention there.
Thank you very much. My name is Fred McBruce, MOBA 83. My question especially is to Sam Dotto, who was my senior. Reading through the brochure that we were given on page 5, from paragraph 2, 3, 4, 5, we see that a lot of our old students were very influential in this country. But looking at how far we have come, especially with education, Ghana being a developing nation, infrastructure and finance will forever be a problem. But every nation can manage its change management and then move on to have a better future. It looks like most of the nice policies you are all talking about hasn't been managed well during the changing period. So I would like to, my brother, to tell us how best it is to manage such programs and such policies. Somebody comes 3 years, 3 years HS.
The producers, sorry, your question is understood, so if you don't mind.
Okay, so that is it to my brother.
I'm going to give, in fact, because I did some intervention, I took up some of your time. So now each one of you have 2.5 minutes, okay, to wrap up your submission, and then that is great for if Abu Shapeni would like to say something, then he can come in and do it. So, Senior Samson, this is the last question goes to you. So use it as your starting point and to conclude.
Okay, Senior Magrus or Junior Magrus, thank you for that question. If you check out the definition of change management, the system, you get 69 million definitions. Does that help you here? Which means that all sorts of governments have all sorts of change strategies they use. But there are 6 or 7 basic issues that run through every change program. Depending on where the government focuses on, they may go back to the drawing table in the next 2 days or 3 years. But if they have a concerted effort, and when I say that, what I mean is that the key persons in any change system are those who implement it. And these are the educationists. So leave the announcements, leave the implementation to the educationists to do. Yesterday, I was at the airport to see my brother off, and he had to fill out Arrive Canada on his phone. They had stolen his phone. He didn't have his laptop. He's an ICT-oriented person. For 1.5 hours, he struggled. And I said to myself, what about my dad or my mom who doesn't even have an email address? It's not easy. So I think we must be ready not to celebrate successes too quickly when we implement these policies. We must have a system where we monitor the progress of our implementation and reforms. And we don't get political about it, but let's leave it to the experts to say that indeed we are making progress in these areas. Then we can celebrate and implement these blueprints. But it appears that we make the announcement for a particular reform, then we go to bed. And then after 3 years, we realize that it's not working. Then we come back and say, but we announced you didn't hear it, you're not helping, you are against us. But the bottom line here is that we have a divide in our country. Half will belong to a particular party, half will belong to another party. So from day one, you have resistance to your change implementation. So until we bring all of them on board through a national dialogue, we're going to have a problem. Because there will be half the population against every policy you bring, whether it is good or bad. So I advocate serious stakeholder management, where we bring all the players on board. Then the implementers are included in these change programs. But as a leader, please create the shared need for the change. Give us a vision we must believe in. Mobilize our commitment. Then go to plan and change. And when you finish, communicate, align on infrastructure, and then finally monitor the momentum change initiative.
Okay, thank you.
On that note, I have 3 issues. Central government continue to provide the PES the platform. We train, recruit, and remunerate our teachers. And finally, leave the educationists to do what they know how to do best. That's what they were trained for. Stay out of the politics of education. Leave them to do what they know how to do best. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senior. Now, I go to Senior Deho.
Following up from where he left, one, we are a developing nation. We must understand that we don't have all the money that we need to do all the things that we want to do. So it comes to the second point. What is our aspiration as far as education is concerned? That must inform what we do. I proposed a blend of technology-driven education with the current state of infrastructure that we have. We need to learn to use what we have to get what we want. And that is what I think gets lost in all the things that we say. Education should not be a political gimmick. It should not be. Even though in Ghana, if you cough, somebody can say, you can tell which political party you belong to. That shouldn't really matter. Once we understand where we want to go and where we are, let us focus on what is important. We need to build a population that is educated to such an extent that the country will be moved along the lines that we intend or what we hope for. It is an aspiration. Not everybody will agree with us, but let us have the aspiration in the first place. Without that, we're just going through various processes and various mills and end up with relatively nothing. Thank you.
Senior Keke. Well, Senior, I want Joe to be the senior right. To give her the sum up. Yeah.
Well, in terms of closing remarks, we've talked about a significant number of, or a few ideas which we could consider in terms of financing education in the new normal. But I think the most important thing that we have to take away is that we need to understand which of our schools are really can take care of themselves, which ones can't take care of themselves, and which ones can benefit from that hybrid model. And once we've done all of that, we then need to figure out how do we bring the private sector into the play, because the government cannot do everything on its own. It's impossible. It has too many needs. There's healthcare, there are roads, there's electricity. So where the private sector can lend a helping hand, we should encourage that to happen. I think that will be very important in the new normal. Thank you.
I think my take is this. We should ask ourselves very fundamental questions. The fundamental question that we have to answer now is what are we trying to achieve with education? Are we just going to the motions, going through the motions just to educate people so that they have a certificate, or that they have a certificate and they know what they're doing and what they're doing is useful to the country? Because look, one, enrollment has gone up, which is great. Graduation has gone up, which is great. But unemployment, the youth, is going up, and that is not great. Two, even those who are trained as engineers, as Dr. Kaufman said, they don't even understand engineering. They are not practical in the real sense of the word for the country. And remember that there are countries who have used education to completely change their lives, change the whole country, like Singapore. They got independence in 1965, a year before we kicked out Kwame Nkrumah, and they were a backward third world, or maybe even fourth world, because all they had was the entrepot. And yet, Lee Kuan Yew, using education as the basis, was able to change this country from a third world, first world country within a period of less than 50 years or 30 years for his own administration. So we got to, as a country, begin to ask ourselves the fundamental question that what are we trying to achieve with education? It's not just a process, it's not just anything, but we cannot continue to spend 3.7 or 3.99% of our GDP just to train people who just have certificates and are selling in the street. I'll give you another story. There's a young lady who just finished Central University as a nurse. She used to sell, you see those girls selling in the street, carrying things on their head. The girl used to sell like that. And I got to know her mother, got to know the girl, and decided to take this girl to school. She had failed maths 3 times. And because of that, she couldn't proceed. And so I challenged her that if you pass the math, I'll take you to school. And she did maths within 3 months. This girl got the math. I was actually in the US when she called me to tell me the story. So through whatever influence I could muster, I got her into Central University. This girl just qualified with the first class this last year. So this value was selling in the street. We didn't even recognize it. I mean, she was lucky because actually she was brought to me because of an eye problem. And I'm so proud of her, but also very... So I feel bad about the others who are walking in the streets that we don't see. So again, let's go back to fundamental questions that, in spite of the financing issues, infrastructure issues, we have to remember that this is what builds a nation, and we've got to build a nation. Numbers are going up, and they are wrong numbers. Unemployment, youth, that is not even a good security issue for us.
Thank you, Senators, and thank you all. While we're doing the mic testing, I was asked to recite some poems and things like that. I'm a poet, so among other things. But what I wanted to do, the importance of this engagement series is what I wanted to introduce the discussion with. Okay, and the piece that I wrote this is not poetry, this is prose. Okay, I begin by saying that nature throws its mysteries at us. The natural world from which we have evolved is largely indifferent. It is what it is. It is in no hurry to reveal its secrets to us. Fortunately, being sentient, being curious, being explorers, we humans deploy intuition and logic, the tools of the craft of science, the beautiful language of mathematics, the written languages that we have, the range of human knowledge, be it philosophy or religion, our attempt to probe nature. Therefore, all human travails all human triumphs derive from humanity's untiring educational enterprise. Our successes have enabled us to raise civilizations on vistas of our planet. Education is thus the birthplace of modern society. Today, there is no other issue that so unites humankind as the compelling need to educate every child born of a woman on this planet we call Earth, our common biosphere to which we all belong. The Earth does not know a Ghanaian or American. Nature doesn't know race as white or black. It is what it is. So the engagement that we have begins with here in Ghana, comprising 31 million people. In the 21st century, the enterprise of education engages our attention, and it should, as it did engage the generations before us. This engagement is our patrimony. It is our moral remit. It is our impelling purpose to invest in education and to apply the dividends of education towards lifting the greatest majority of our people who languish in the quagmire of poverty onto luxuriant plains of prosperity and enlightenment, so that in all aspects of our national life, we could foster the good society. Education has the capacity to advance the good society. This is the greatest legacy our generation could bequeath to posterity. In 1951, Kwame Nkrumah was a young man. Maybe now as I stand, I'm close to twice his age at that time. But a young man who had lived in the United States and returned to Africa had seen that they dropped bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That the Western society were about 1,000 years ahead of us materially. When he read the statistics, 1950-51 academic year, there were only 62,500 pupils in the elementary school system. And Nkrumah audaciously increased the number to 450,000 when he became head of government business. This is the type of courage that we need in our new public office holders and those who aspire to national public duties, be they politicians or civil servants. The courage of conviction to do that is right for the greatest majority of our people. Because the enemy is not a political party. The enemy is poverty. That's a threatened humanity since time began. And we know that through the instrumentality of education, a nation can make substantial progress. We have done so considerably as a country. But as we have heard from this discussion, under the new normal, more opportunities exist for us to improve our act. On that score, I thank you all for coming, and may God bless us all. Abu Chapeni would like to say a few words, and then we go. He's coming later.
Thank you very much, moderator. And of course, please let's give a round of applause to our distinguished speakers and moderator. That was quite amazing, insightful, thoughtful. We appreciate your contribution to MOBA. All right, so on this note, we're going to go straight to the next item by singing the school hymn. So shall we all rise? I think we will do one, and that is it. One and the last, okay. 1 and 8, yes. Hymn 832. For all the saints, for all the saints. 3, 2, 1. For the saints who from their labors rest, who thee by faith before the world confess, thy name, O Jesus, before
of pearl streams in the countless host. Sing it to Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Alleluia. Alleluia.
Yeah, back in the days, would they, hey, but seniors are here. Please welcome Mfantsipim with his closing remarks.
There too, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, seniors, colleagues, it is said that the frontiers of knowledge has no boundaries, that man's ability and willingness to explore the realms of learning is limited only by his choice, by him choosing either deliberately or unconsciously how far he could go. Dedicated on the fact which was so widely believed by our founding fathers, that education is the key to the future. We must all diligently, we must all diligently promote whatever will promote to the widest inquiry that we can push the limits of learning to be. That, in truth, is what we have been discussing. We have 4 panelists here, all old boys, who make me very proud to be an old boy. They've come here, and all of them, bar none, having chosen their different topics, have been excellent in coming up with what they've said. They've been confident, and they've, as far as I'm concerned, acquitted themselves beautifully. They are part of what makes Kwabotre what it is. We're forever grateful to all of you. And in truth, we have all learned a lot from you. And to Senior Roland, the moderator, our poet, Roland has a passion which I wish every old boy has. I believe Roland doesn't like me saying this, but Roland was the chairman of the 2016 speech day, and on the stage, he promised that he will contribute $100,000 to the Mfantsipim Endowment Fund. I think on the day you said you'll do it for over 10 years, right? Over 5 years, good. That was 2016. I think Roland has practically paid everything. He's only left with something small. I just pray, as you could hear him, his passion and everything he pushed into it. I just pray that his passion is that infectious to the rest of us, that we will all want to give back, if not even in cash, in kind, for the development of the school. I thank you all for coming. And at this stage, I'd like to say good night. God bless you all. Campus, let's pray.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pim. Please give it a once more time for Captain Paul. I'm told it's called Forjo, not Forjo. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Pim, once again. All right, so we're about to wrap up, but don't forget, when we wrap up, we have a little bit, item 13 in the foyer, so don't be in a hurry, just have a little bit of socialization, but of course, ensuring the protocols and all that. So we're going to say a quick prayer, but before that also, let me say a big thank you to our sponsors. That includes multimedia. Dr. Tim Cran, I want to say thank you to Divine Media, also to everybody also supported, especially to the MAES committee who puts all this together. God bless you, and hopefully we'll see you another time. My name is William Diego Pakabeni, and our moderator told you the year badge, MOBA 2000. That is why I completed. We are not part of this, but I don't know how come we are featured in this year SYG. But it's all good. Yeah, we did a good job last year, so we are back again. Thank you very much, and enjoy your evening. Thank you. Oh, sorry, please, a quick prayer from Senior Charles Covenant.
Let me also acknowledge Mrs. Pari Abuaji, the only lady who lightened up our evening. Thank you, madam. Is there another lady? Another lady? Oh. Okay. Shall we pray? This time we'll stand up. Father, we thank you for today. It's been a splendid day. We thank you for your mercies. We thank you for your wisdom. We thank you for the exhibition of sacrifice by the speakers. As we leave here and go, we ask for your traveling mercies, believing that a year by this time, your grace will bring us back so that we can also contribute our part to make this, our country and the world, a better place. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.